Today, Instagram and TikTok are full of people promoting things called adaptogens. Adapto what? There's a lot of people saying that you could have more energy, have less stress, better immunity, generally feel more vibrant in just a handful of days by using these natural substances called adaptogens. And it sounds almost too good to be true. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about what they are, what's their history, how do they work, do they work, what's the pros and cons, and if you would wanna use them, how would you use them? And if you're new to the channel, my name is Tero. That's a weird Finnish name because I am Finnish. I'm a 13th generation family farmer out of Finland. And I'm first and foremost a dad and a husband to my beautiful wife, Cora. We have 3 very young kids. That's why sometimes I have puke on my shirt like today. Most of the time it's from kids, sometimes from me. And this is The Spore. This is my YouTube channel where I share new ideas and thoughts and lessons from mistakes I've made along the journey of raising my kids, living in multiple countries around the world, and also building businesses. And one of the businesses relevant to this video, it's called Four Sigmatic. It's one of the pioneers in mushrooms and adaptogens. I've been working with adaptogens for like 2 decades, and over the past 10 years, we're building Four Sigmatic. I've lectured on this topic. I've written one of the seminal books on adaptogens called Healing Adaptogens. It's available in every bookstore. And I know a little bit about the topic. Let's jump straight to it. So in order for something to be an adaptogen, it has to be 3 things. First of all, it has to be non-toxic. So it has to be a substance you can take every day for the whole year and there'll be no negative effects at the effective dose. Secondly, it's to be normalizing. So it's balancing body system. It's not an upper, it's not a downer. This is sometimes a little bit hard for people to understand, but it is normalizing existing bodily functions and systems. More about that later. And finally, it's non-specific, another thing that Westerners can struggle with, but it is not targeting like one part of the body. It's not like a liver herb only, but it has multiple functions. And that's where it also starts to become like too good to be true. And again, more about that later too. But it is interesting to note these as we'll talk about maybe how this name adaptogen is used incorrectly at some occasions. Adaptogens have been used for hundreds and in some cases thousands of years by multiple different subcultures around the world. But the official term was coined in the 40s, so to say. The Soviet Union, and back then, was trying to find a way to have their soldiers to have an edge naturally. Many military complexes, including the American one, were using stimulants. So think of like amphetamines for soldiers. So if you were a fighter jet pilot, you crashed, you fell somewhere, you would take a drug to be able to run for 2 days without sleeping and taking much rest. And in other cases, to have more concentration and focus. But with stimulants, think of like caffeine, nicotine, and many other stimulants, there's a letdown effect. If not that day, within the next few days or weeks. And this Dr. Nikolai Lazarev was commissioned to find, is there a natural way how you could improve the performance? Maybe not as much as a drug, but naturally could you improve your focus, concentration, stamina, endurance for soldiers without the letdown the next day? And together with him, and then his kind of like protege, this Dr. Bregman, they had over 1,000, I think it was like 1,300 doctors and physicians in the Soviet Union, and they conducted over 3,000 studies of different natural substances to come up with these adaptogens. The name adaptogen obviously refers to you being able to adapt to different stressors outside the body, which our body naturally does, but helping the body do that better was the kind of the main term. In the following decades, other researchers in different countries have studied adaptogens, and it is actually an official term. Which sets it apart from a lot of other TikTok, Instagram trends, is that it's actually a technical term. European Union, where I kind of come from, bans all kinds of terms. Like the word superfood is not a legal term in European Union. You can't say that a food like blueberry is a superfood because what does it mean? It's a fake marketing term. But adaptogen word you can actually use because there is so much research behind it. So it is not a fad or a fake. It might be used incorrectly, more about that later, but it is a legit scientific term classifying these natural substances that are non-specific, non-toxic, and have a normalizing effect on our body. So one of the main challenges with adaptogens is that even though it's a very clearly defined scientific term that you can legally use in marketing, there isn't a one list that would say what is allowed to be called an adaptogen and what is not. There is not a definite list. The original list had somewhere around 10 to 15 species, And now it's like 24 is roughly somewhere around 20 to 30 species that are universally considered as adaptogens. But it's been used for like hundreds of species. There are brands that say, it's like, buy this greens powder, it has 75 adaptogens in it. There isn't 75 adaptogens in the world today. The challenge is obviously as more research comes, we know so little about natural substances and there's so little funding for natural substances, unlike more easily patentable drugs. So that for these natural substances, there isn't research, but it does come slowly. And when it comes, certain substances are more proven to be adaptogenic. So the list is growing year over year, but not that fast. The second problem is that even though adaptogens work, and I'll talk about that later, not every adaptogen product works. You gotta separate those two. A lot of adaptogen products on the market, like a adaptogen smart bar or something, the dosing is too low, or they're in the wrong format. You're supposed to use the root, they use the leaf, it's not extracted, it's not bioavailable, there's a bunch of stuff. So it's not an effective dose. So let's take ashwagandha, we'll talk about that more later, but ashwagandha can work, but that doesn't mean every ashwagandha product will work if you make that big difference. And that's true for a lot of other things besides adaptogens too in health and wellness. And then finally, it is definitely abused by MLM companies, online marketers, and all kinds of online ads because it has legit research and backing enough to build credibility to sell products, but it's also used very liberally in order to sell product. Okay, so there must be good reasons as well for adaptogens. I think I mentioned one, that it's actually a scientific base. So all the true adaptogens have tons of research around them, besides having hundreds, if not thousands of years of indigenous use, be it in traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda, or other subcultures that did worse at documenting their herbalism. But there's a lot of Western research, often double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized, these kind of gold standard studies, and they work. Secondly, they're kind of safe and tonic, and we'll talk about that a little more, but there are things like in herbalism too, there are uppers and downers. One anecdotal way to think about it is that there are minister herbs that try to prevent problems before emerging, the goal of a politician, even though that might not happen. So you try to take an herb before the allergy season to avoid allergies from emerging, right? Then there's assistant herbs, and these are herbs that you take once you have an issue. Let's say you have a sore throat, so then you take this assistant herb. And then there's these super tonic herbs that you take both for prevention and supporting, and you can take them a year round versus seasonally. There isn't that many of them, but that's beautiful because it's very safe to play with that versus herbalism. If you're new to it, it can be kind of overwhelming of like, what's the dose, how much to take. With adaptogens, the downside risks are very small, yet they can be effective. So I think that's generally a good bet. And the final reason why I think adaptogens are cool and why they're gaining popularity is that they address a lot of modern day wellness issues. So the overwhelming demands of modern day life, us staring at our screens, working hard, trying to be a good parent, a good worker, good friend, also have an interesting life, travel, find new hobbies, excel at those new hobbies. There's a lot of pressure to do things. So people have had issues with, let's say, adrenal fatigue, lack of energy, people sleep generally pretty poorly, gut health is deteriorating, immunity is challenged, reproductive health is challenged, and people have issues. So adaptogens do address a lot of those issues. If you're interested in learning more about adaptogens, obviously, shameless plug, Healing Adaptogens is an amazing book. It's pretty affordable. You can find it on Amazon too if you don't have a bookstore nearby you. It covers the 21 top adaptogens, the clinical research. There's like a lot of pages of references. It's very easy to read as well. But yeah, don't take my word for it. Read the reviews on Amazon or something. But in order for you to get going, I'm going to walk through 6 adaptogens and a high-level view of those 6 adaptogens and how you could use them for your health and wellness. So how do adaptogens even work? There's a simple answer and there's a more complex answer. The simple answer is that these herbs or plants and mushrooms have built innate defense mechanisms as they build resistance to the world. So a lot of these adaptogens grow in somewhat extreme conditions or conditions where they have to build compounds and molecules to protect themselves from stress. Case example of that could be a rhodiola or maca that grow in high altitude or very kind of harsh conditions. And there they build resistance to the weather and the conditions. And those molecules are almost like hormetic stressors. They're like mini boot camps for our body. They give us a signal for our body to be stronger in one way or the other. These active compounds and adaptogens can be divided into few buckets, from saponins to terpenes to beta-glucans, but generally most of them work on restoring our stress levels. And most of that stress happens through this HPA axis: hypothalamus, adrenals, pituitary, and the thyroid is actually technically part of that too. But we have this innate stress response mechanism, fight or flight, that we trigger, and that's good for you. But if that gets triggered too much, then you might have a lot of fatigue and stress, and elevated stress can hurt focus too. And what these do is that they help with that HPA axis. I'll talk about specific examples later, but the HPA axis is one of the common ways how adaptogens work. The other way is through the gut, both helping with gut biome, but also helping with our immunity through the gut and some of the neurotransmitters through the vagus nerve into our brain as well. Example of that could be like beta-glucans. But these tend to be very bitter or strong compounds or even polyphenols that impact our body, give our body a signal. Technically, they are a form of stress to your body, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but you're putting more stress on your body through these adaptogens in order for your body to be stronger to fight those stressors later when they encounter. You're at the airport and your flight is delayed or something. Let's start with the one that I think most people need help with, which is stress and sleep. My favorite adaptogens for that is reishi, R-E-I-S-H-I. Conoderma lucidum is the most common variety, but there's a couple other Latin names for it. And ashwagandha, Withania somnifera. Ashwagandha is a root. Smells like a horse, they say. It's in the nightshade family, and that is another one. And then tulsi, it's a leaf, also known as holy basil. These are probably my most favorite, most studied, most easy to approach herbs for managing our stress, particularly that HPA axis that I mentioned. They're not sedative, think of like valeriana or kava, but they are normalizing the stress responses you have, and hopefully through that helping you to sleep deeper and have better mood. Funny enough, they also have secondary benefits, such as reishi for immunity and gut health through beta-glucans. There's ashwagandha, has benefits for cognitive health, and tulsi has effects for like sexual health too. But most commonly, I would recommend these if you're battling with stress and looking to have a calmer, smoother life without being addicted to weed, alcohol, or sedatives. On the more energizing and uplifting and adaptogen side, some of my favorites are cordyceps. Cordyceps sinensis or militaris would be the two most common versions of cordyceps. It is a parasitic mushroom. You might know it from the HBO's Last of Us show. Don't be afraid, it's completely safe for humans. It's probably the adaptogen that got me the most excited about adaptogens. It's this weird mushroom that gives you energy, increases your VO2 max, your ATP production, so your cellular energy and ability to take oxygen in. So instead of using caffeine, for example, to trick your brain to have energy, you're using an herb that slowly increases the amount of oxygen in your body. And by having more oxygen in your body, you are more energized. Another one is mucuna. I think this is very underrated. I think it's gonna trend on TikTok soon. Mucuna pruriens is an Ayurvedic herb, the velvet bean. So think of it like the super bean. Funny enough, a lot of these adaptogens are the top species of big families. Like I talk about nightshades with ashwagandha. In this case, in the legumes, mucuna is a powerful source of L-dopa, which is a precursor to dopamine. It's something that helps you feel happy. Funny enough, it's also used for cognitive health and sexual health. So when you are calm and focused and happy, you're probably more in the mood to do work, right? And then rhodiola, it's another thing that is near and dear to me. Us Nordic people have been using rhodiola forever, sometimes known as Nordic ginseng. No, it is not in the ginseng family, but it's something that like Vikings took before going to battle, and it was credited a lot, or the success of Vikings, that they had this adaptogen that gave them energy to fight in the battlefields longer. It is one of the rare herbs that the European Union actually allows you to make health claims out of for cognitive health. So it is used for cognitive products by and large, but it is amazing for endurance sports as well. So if you want to have natural energy through these compounds like rosavins in rhodiola, it is an amazing place to start. If you're interested in consuming adaptogens, you can find them on Amazon and natural product stores, and heck, now even in Costco and Walmart at different variants of quality. You can also buy adaptogens in bulk and then extract them yourself. That's quite a lot of extra work. If you're interested in how to make tinctures, you can obviously learn here on YouTube on how to make them. You can learn how to make your own decoctions. But if both of those words, tinctures and decoctions, sound scary or difficult to you, you can buy them pre-extracted. Just make sure that you're getting the right species at the right dose at a bioavailable form, ideally organic. Some of these do get sourced kind of shady ways. These compounds are naturally very bitter. Most people that are new to herbalism or natural remedies don't like bitters, or they're difficult to consume. The two common exceptions to that rule is dark chocolate and coffee. So I would recommend buying an adaptogen-based coffee product or making your own coffee and then adding them into your coffee. That way, you're probably gonna have a more enjoyable flavor experience in the beginning. As you start consuming them more, you're gonna start craving those bitters, and that's cool. But in the beginning, I would recommend mixing them or buying a coffee or cacao-based product. Secondly, I would recommend just starting with one adaptogen at a time and then slowly ramping up the dosing, generally starting with around 500 milligrams of a bioavailable extracted form of any of these adaptogens that I mentioned. Some more, some less, but that's a good rule of thumb. And then ramping it up all the way to like 1500 milligrams of each, and then introducing another one maybe the next month. So each month introducing one adaptogen and kind of like auditing yourself on how you feel. There are some rare exceptions. You could be allergic to one of these, particularly like ashwagandha and reishi. It's very rare and uncommon, but it does happen. So not every natural substance, even though if it's non-toxic, it is for everyone. People are allergic to carrots. It doesn't mean carrots are toxic. Adaptogens are for real. They're amazing. They're safe. They're effective. There's so much to love about adaptogens. Sadly, marketers spoil everything. So there are a lot of shady products. There's products that are not actually adaptogens that are called adaptogens. There are low dosed or wrong format adaptogens, kind of making it tricky for everyone. And there's people claiming that they work too fast. They're not pharmaceuticals. They're not as effective as certain isolated compounds, but they are also safer and more holistic. So they're more regenerative than just like a Band-Aid. You should feel effects in 7 days or less for your energy, your stress level, or other parts. Immunity and gut health might take a little bit longer, but that's a whole nother story. But for energy and stress, you should be able to feel effects within 7 days if they are effective to you. And sometimes you're drawn to certain adaptogens because your body is craving them for at that point, and then later another adaptogen. So if one didn't work at one point, maybe revisit it in 1 year from now. And as a shameless plug, if you're uncertain, if you're in doubt on where to start and how to go about it, go to foursigmatic.com. I can vouch myself, obviously I'm biased, that these are bioavailable, effective, and tasty products that are very fairly priced compared to some of these overpriced online marketed products. And by the way, if you buy from foursigmatic.com, there's a 100% money back guarantee. So if you are not happy, you don't get the benefits, you will get 100% money back, no questions asked. You can also buy these products at places like Whole Foods, Target, Sprouts, farmers markets, and many other places, and Amazon too. If you don't know where to start, obviously there's a shameless plug, but go to Four Sigmatic. There are many other great adaptogen brands as well, and many other great adaptogen books besides my own, but reading the book and checking out Four Sigmatic is a great place to start. Hopefully this content was educational and helpful. If you want more of this kind of content, leave a comment below. If you enjoyed it, share with friends, put the thumbs up button, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in some other video. Ciao, ciao.